and welcome to the Postmodern Art Podcast, the podcast dedicated to giving artists who are wowing the world over the platform they deserve. I'm your host, Nathan Ragland, and for today's episode, I think we found a fantastic writer that is doing anything but failing at telling some sensational stories. Today's guest is Gary Trimarchi, an animation writer with several indie series under his belt, including his own series like Failing Upward and Starstruck. Gary is someone that I have seen in the indie animation space doing some fantastic work, like I said, whether it's for his own stuff or helping other people write for their things. So whenever he approached me about joining in on the podcast, it was more or less an honor to have him on to talk about all this incredible stuff that he's working on and then some. If you enjoy Gary, please make sure you support him with the links down in the description below. If you enjoy the podcast, make sure you like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. Leave 5 stars wherever you can. You know I see that stuff, you know it genuinely warms my heart. Speaking of subscribe, I have a challenge for you guys. If the YouTube channel of the podcast can get 2,500 subscribers by the end of the year 2024, I will get a tattoo as voted on by the community. So, if you want to see me get inked up with a potential design that you could be submitting, please subscribe to the podcast. Whenever I made this challenge last week, we gained 11 subscribers. So, I think it's a fun little challenge that you guys should help accomplish today, just saying. And look, if you want to go a little further with that support, may I recommend you check out the merch shop at fourthwall.com with that link in the description below. We have some fantastic merch done by some outstanding artists, and I think you would look fantastic in that merch today. But now, without further ado, please enjoy the Postmodern Art Podcast. I'm going to go ahead and ask this now, because, for my little intro at the very least, I was going to address you by name. How do you pronounce your last name? Is it Trimarchi? Is it Trimarchi or something like that?
Trimarchi. It's Italian. It's Trimarchi.
Trimarchi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me be aware.
It's silent. Yeah.
Okay. Trimarchi. Gotcha. Okay.
I have let people full stop call me Trimarchi for my whole life, and I just don't tell them because it's so funny when it eventually does get revealed, and they're just like, "What the? Why did you let me do that?" I'm like, why didn't you ever ask?
As well as I try at least do a little due diligence because I have butchered people's names horrendously on this podcast before. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing a little bit to not embarrass myself as much. All right, Gary, before we really get going, I must ask the icebreaker question of the podcast, if I may. Let's say you get to go to a desert island on your own accord. It's just you alone with your thoughts. You get to kick back, relax, breathe. You can truly enjoy yourself for a little bit. With accommodations, you're not stranded on an island. It's your own little personal paradise away from society for a little bit.
Okay.
To help make sure you don't go completely insane on this island, you could bring one piece of media or one piece of art to help whoever kind of headspace you want on this island. If given this opportunity, what would that one piece be?
Oh yeah, that's really tricky. I'm looking at my media shelf over here, which is kind of woefully smaller than it usually is, just because when I moved out to LA from Long Island, I kept all of my stuff just in my parents' basement, so it's a fraction of what it is. Mm-hmm. So my point of reference isn't super big right now. I'm looking at all this stuff. My first inclination is obviously a TV show because it's just a bunch of stuff. It's not just an hour-long movie,
right?
Or a 2-hour-long movie rather. Because my first thing is to say one of my favorite things is FLCL.
Yes.
But I don't know. That's only 6 episodes. I've seen them so many times already. I kind of know them in and out.
Wait, so you're just including the base series. You're not including the 2 follow-up series that Adult Swim have.
Yeah, I mean, I love alternative. I really love alternative, but yeah, it would be the base series.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I was actually thinking about this a lot just now, and it might be a little bit of a cheat, but I might say if I could have just my selection of whatever Mystery Science Theater episodes.
Okay.
Yeah, that might be a good one. I find something very oddly soothing about Mystery Science Theater. I don't know why. it's a show designed to make you laugh, but it relaxes me more than anything. Maybe because once again I've just seen the episodes so many times, I know all the jokes, and there's a familiarity with it.
Right.
But it's got a very similar to how a lot of people find like the bridge sounds on Star Trek really relaxing.
Okay.
I don't know. There's like hour-long videos of like bridge sounds of Star Trek: The Next Generation. I find the sounds on the Satellite of Love very like relaxing. So maybe that.
I mean, I think that personally, I think that'd be a good choice because I can get where you're coming from with like how it feels more or less like relaxing in a way because it's just like you and a bunch of buddies like basically sitting together watching a movie and just roasting it like together with friends like with the way that they more or less present it. So I can get the relaxing aspect of it.
Yeah, and it's like it's something I can both engage in and not have to engage in at the same time.
Right.
Like I don't have to be like creatively like stimulated by it all the time and like really like get into it. And like I said, there's a familiarity with it. So I would say like, yeah, those like, I would say just like a bunch of Mystery Science Theater stuff episodes. Maybe not every episode. Maybe having every episode on hand. Sure. Like
there you
that
go.
would be good. I could just like have like a library to pick from. And that's like hours and hours and hours of content.
Yeah.
So just like I could just like go into there and pick whatever I wanted. But yeah, I would say that, and it's like I said, both engaging and not like it doesn't have to be at the same time. So like, I would lock that in. That would probably be good.
I mean, I think like I said, I think it's a really good choice because like there are times where it's like you can watch a certain episode, be really engaged with like the silly commentary that they're doing with it or whatnot, or really enjoy the movie, and then there's just be some that could just be good, more or less background noise at the end of the day, like to focus on your own personal writing.
That's what MST3K kind of was for me for a while. Was just like I spent all of high school like watching, and like junior high like watching all the episodes.
Okay.
And then to a point where like they started popping up on YouTube when YouTube was like in its early stage. I mean, they're still on YouTube. You can still find them. But like it was kind of just like after a while I had become so familiar with every riff that they just kind of became really kind of like relaxing, and I would fall asleep to them eventually because it was just like having background noise on.
Right.
But there are still aspects of it that I think that still really intrigued me from a creative standpoint, just the set design and the characters and everything. And I still get like a cool like inspiration from it every time I watch it, especially when you consider like, it's this show that was filmed in like, like the Midwest, like in the freezing cold, and like there's this ragtag group of people making this puppet show that somehow became a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah.
I find that in of itself like really inspiring. I think it kind of functions as both a creative inspiration and just like a comfort show. So I think that's like the perfect show for me.
Well, if that's the case, especially if you're locking that answer in, I cannot think of a better way to start the Postmodern Art Podcast. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Nathan Ragland. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, or follow whatever audio streaming platform you prefer. You would look fantastic in the merch that we have at the merch shop, fourthwall.com. Link to that will be in the description below. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Postmod Art Pod for future updates and guest announcements, including today's guest. He is an animation writer and indie series creator with several indie shows under his belt, including his own series like Failing Upward and Starstruck. Welcome to the podcast, Gary Trimarchi.
Hey, how's everyone doing?
We're doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Just chilling out. Thought I'd come and hang out on the podcast, and looking forward to having a good chat.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to be here more than anything else. Like I've said before, your stuff is stuff that I constantly see, especially in the indie animation space, with how great and how grounded of concepts you have developed, both like whether it's your own stuff or stuff you're having a hand in. It's really incredible, like just on the outside, seeing what what you have been able to do so far, and I cannot wait to dig into it. But before we talk about the stuff you're doing nowadays, I want to go back just a little bit and learn more or less the origin story of Gary. What got you interested in art and animation stuff in the first place?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like, as far as animation goes, My family definitely took a liking to Nicktoons when they first dropped. So just like those initial like three or so Nicktoons. I remember my mom loved Rugrats. I definitely like Doug a lot as a kid.
Okay.
And it was just like I think I was born in '89, so like I was probably like 3 or 4 when those were starting to hit. So kind of like the perfect age to start getting into cartoons and everything. And like I think going back, like it's such a that those initial Nicktoons are such a leap in kind of artistic freedom compared to everything that had come before them, everything before that. You know, there were exceptions, obviously, but a lot of the cartoons of the '80s were kind of like toy commercials, which I still love. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, I love GI Joe and Transformers and all that classic '80s stuff. But like, I think it was just interesting to kind of be a kid, in the blossoming kind of like, I don't want to say avant-garde, but maybe like kind of more creatively inclined era of cartoons, like within the '90s. And once again, like there's total like toy commercials in that era as well. But
Oh
like
yeah.
I just think coming into that, it definitely opened my mind a bit more to like, oh, you can kind of just do anything in animation. It doesn't have to be, sell a toy to you, basically. So I would say those, and then, I think the real kind of like wake up moment for me was like around like '96. So I was like 7, 8 years old around that point. Like Kablam, when that started airing,
Yes.
was like a really big kind of just like, oh my God, like it really can be anything kind of thing, where it's like you can have multiple shows in one show. And you get older and you find out that those maybe the shows Nickelodeon didn't want to commit to a full series on. But regardless, still really cool and still like iconic in their own rights. And I probably love those shows more than anything else on Nickelodeon. So I think just the kind of insanity that was Kablam, and not only that, but like Kablam also had shows that were kind of mundane slice of life stuff like Sniz and Fondue, and to an
Yes.
extent like Loopy, and like I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but like specifically like with Life with Loopy, like I think that was like a big catalyst in kind of my maybe like, oh, let's take something like my inclination to take like, oh, let's take something mundane and kind of make it fantastical in the character's head thing, specifically like for Failing Upward.
Hmm.
So like that was definitely a big thing for me. And then once again, as I'm getting older, like slice of life shows like Pepper Ann was like the first big one for me, where
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like this is so. I think even as I rewatched the entire series recently, and I think I appreciate it even more now than when I was a kid because the writing is just so solid. And PA is such an interesting character because she's heavily flawed, and
Yes.
like the show doesn't make any excuses for it, and it calls her out on it all the time, and she doesn't always get punished for it, but sometimes she does, and it flows very true to life, which I always really liked. And obviously like stuff like Hey Arnold as well, but I think if we're talking just in terms of like, oh, I really want to do this as a career, like Simpsons obviously very big for me. And then it's more in terms of my tastes, as I was kind of becoming a teenager, uh Mission Hill, I probably watched like the first couple
Mm,
episodes when they were on the WB, and then got into it way later on Adult Swim. Not way later, but like a couple years later.
right.
And then MTV's Downtown, Undergrads, Clone High, kind of all of those like 2000s sort of slice of life in some cases shows that were geared towards late teens and 20 somethings. Something about that vibe really clicked with me. Um, and yeah, I think that's kind of like a brief history of like my relationship with animation. There's obviously stuff now that I love.
Oh yeah.
I'm really into like Yuasa right now, who did like A Night of Short Walk On Girl and Tatami Galaxy, like stuff like that. Once again, just like extrapolating upon like mundane things and then using animation as a medium to kind of turn it into something extravagant. I think that's what I really love about animation, is that you can take kind of like everyday concepts and turn them into like crazy situations. And you can do the same thing in film, but there's just something about the limitlessness of animation and I just it just kind of clicked with me in that way.
I mean, I can absolutely see why, especially with all those shows that you more or less listed, like the early Nicktoons. I mean, there's a reason why people still love and appreciate those shows to this day and will crave it anytime they will.
Yeah.
And especially with those MTV shows that you were talking about, or like the Mission Hill, like they spoke, especially to the audience that you were at the time, but they really spoke and they really told a story that animation rarely kind of more or less told up to that point. Because like you had said, right in the generation before you, it was mainly a lot of toy commercials. Obviously, there were. It's not like they didn't work. There's a reason why, again, some of those characters people still love those things.
Yeah, I hold no like ill will if you want to create something that's simultaneously going to sell a toy, as long as you can tell a good story. And
exactly.
Transformers. I mean, like there's the fandom around Transformers is huge. So like clearly they latched on to someone, and it was more than just the toys, because how many shows came and went that were supposed to sell toys? You know what I mean? Like there were a bunch of them that like showed up and then they didn't click. So I don't think it's inherently a problem. I just think there is more creative freedom when you're not focusing on that, and there's more of a chance to resonate and tell a more human story, I guess.
I mean, I was gonna give another good example of like for example, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. How many different reiterations of that have we got to this day to where the story has always been told in a more unique way? Just because it started off with toys, just because you make a series just for the intention of toys, doesn't mean it's a bad series.
No, absolutely not. And I'm a huge Turtles fan, so like that was like that movie in particular, like still like the first movie, the live action one, like still influences me to this day. I recently had my 34th birthday over. It was it's a video store out here in LA that has a micro cinema in the back. So it's like a VHS video store, and then they have a movie theater in the back.
Oh, that's
so
sick.
I chose to watch like the first Ninja Turtles movie on VHS, like on a big screen, because I've seen that movie so many times and it's still really important to me. And it's just like a testament to like treating a silly concept very seriously and getting something really cool out of it. So like, yeah, I mean, and that's another thing where like, because you just brought up, like, it's been done so many times, we've gotten so many different artistic takes on it, right?
Yes.
Like, you have the original series that, was more or less made to kind of capitalize on how weird and toyetic it was, but still a fun show. Still really clever writing in places. I still think the first series holds up a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But I love, I mean, like the Ciro Neely version, the 2012 version is like incredibly cool and like really pushed what CGI could do on TV at that point. I thought that was great. And then I know that people love Rise. I love the new one. I loved was it
Mutant Mayhem? The
new Mutant Mayhem. I loved that. I thought it was great. And I think those writers and especially the animators in particular did such a good job. And like by the end, it had become such a different take that I realized these characters are very malleable, and you can kind of just do anything you want with them. And it's just really cool. So yeah, I agree. Like that's a great example of just like something that could start out as toyetic, but then as the years go on, it's been reinvented so many times, and each time with a very specific artistic intent. So yeah, that's a great example.
And thinking back to not just like those early ones, but like the ones that you talked about, the ones that like really got your interest and made you fall in love with animation. At what point did you realize that you wanted to be a part of that field in one way or another? When did you want to be a part of animation and what it offers?
That's a really good question. Because I think I've always loved animation. Like I unabashed animation nerd since I was a kid. Past the point it was cool when you're kind of getting to junior high and everyone starts watching other stuff. But like I was still, obsessed. But there was a point where, I don't necessarily draw, and I was kind of concerned. I was like, I don't know if I could be a part of this. So I kind of switched my focus to writing for live action. Specifically when I was in high school, I remember I've told this story on a couple of other podcasts, but like the first time I saw the movie like Mallrats, I was like blown away.
Okay.
Not necessarily the best movie in the world. It's one of my favorite movies, but it's like I think what kind of hit me hard about it was like you can just write a movie about two dudes hanging out in a mall and talking about comic books.
Yeah.
And you don't need to make it this grand spectacle. You don't need to make it a super deep drama. It can literally just be that, and they'll give you money to film that. And that blew my mind. I was like, well, I could do that. Like, absolutely, 100%, I want to do that. And then from there, I think, kind of getting my own voice, it started to become like I really became interested in just like conversation type movies where characters kind of just talking about their everyday issues and everything, and you know throw a little of my own interests in there as kind of like pop culture reference stuff. But like I was very influenced by like Kevin Smith, and then John Hughes. I
Mm-hmm.
love John Hughes stuff. Some of it's not aged the best, but I think the core idea of kind of giving young characters a voice that wasn't super stereotypical, that treated them like three-dimensional characters, was really, really cool. And I think from there I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to make like slice of life movies. I ended up going to NYU for film.
Okay.
And I did like hands-on production for a while. I did like, my 16 millimeter. I was like one of the last classes that got to do 16 millimeter film there. They switched completely to digital.
Oh wow.
So yeah, like I'm probably like it's weird to think that like I'm at that, let's say, end of that bridge. But it definitely gave me an appreciation for that craft. But eventually I just kind of realized like I don't know if I want to like be behind the camera and everything. I really just want to write. And I started taking a bunch of writing classes. And I took specifically writing for children's television.
Okay.
And that I think allowing me to kind of revisit a lot of the stuff I loved as a kid in the context of, I guess, like college and everything, and learning about how it was written and like seeing all the care and detail that went into every show. I think that's what got me back into writing for animation. I was like, oh, I can do this. Like there are writing crews for animation, like, and I should have known that because I was like a huge Simpsons fan. But
Right.
like the Simpsons kind of seemed like this anomaly. It's like not every show is the Simpsons with a huge staffed writing room, which I mean, what show is staffed at this point? Like it's kind of it's that's like a whole other issue that we're kind of going through right now.
Right.
But it did kind of dawn on me. I'm like, oh, writing is a whole other part of animation. Like it is a very important part too. So I think that class, and then taking history of children's television as well, and learning just about like the wide array of things that have kind of come through animation. It was just kind of like an eye opener for me. And then I was like, well, let me take that kind of slice of life thing from high school and then mix it with the animation. And I'm like, I could do that. And that's when I started again like revisiting shows like Clone High and Mission Hill and Downtown and everything like that. And I was like, I would love to make that. And that's kind of where Failing Upward came out of. But yeah, I think that moment in college was where I was just like, yeah, I would love to do animation writing for a career.
Absolutely. I mean, especially with what the steps that you more or less had to take to it. I mean, especially history of it alone. Really like going into the depths of like how children's television is more or less like evolved and kind of gotten to a point to where we are even at that time when you were studying it. I can totally see how that can almost like reawaken the love in you for animation in general. I mean, as someone that you said yourself, we've already gone through the list of all the different shows and you revisiting those shows as well. Like I can just only imagine how much it really reignited that spark to not just love writing, but just love animation in general. Like it makes me curious. Like, what were some of the animation? I mean, you kind of listed some of them, but what were some of the key ones in general, or maybe even some of the specific writers in general that was a true inspiration for you to really get into the animation, into writing for animation?
Yeah, going back to it, like Sue Rose and Pepper Ann are pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like I said, the fact that she was so like, so my whole thing was like, a lot of people are surprised when I say like Pepper Ann over like Hey Arnold or Doug, but like my whole thing is that like Doug and Arnold, I think as main characters are great, but like they kind of don't hit me in the same way as a character like Pepper Ann.
Right.
So I think the way Sue and her team would write PA just like spoke to me, because like I wasn't the perfect kid in like grade school. Like I wasn't like straight A's or whatever. I was, closer to that. I was the kid that was like kind of, a goof, like I wasn't necessarily like the super nice kid who's just trying to do his best. Like I was the goofball. Like I
Right.
was kind of like, so that really spoke to me. And then, I would say like I'm totally blanking right now. I always do this on podcasts, but like
You're good.
the uh uh Josh Weinstein and then Bill Oakley from Mission Hill.
Yes.
Like, I mean, and obviously all their work on The Simpsons, really, really influential on me. And I think, once again, I think they treat their characters with such like respect. And I think once again that's what works about The Simpsons really well, is that like Homer is a big buffoon, like, and all of them are flawed in some way, but like at the end of the day, they're not the joke. The jokes are the things they do.
Yes.
And I think they approach them at like with such heart and everything. And I think that came through in Mission Hill as well. And it, as the story in general of just like, that show only got one season, and not being able to see those characters grow and blossom is always kind of been like a detriment. But I love the way both of those guys would just kind of like, I think, in any other sitcom, Andy from Mission Hill would just be insufferable. I think he would come off as too much of a jerk, but they kind of like humble him at all the right points. And I just like flawed characters, and those writers in particular do that really well. Pete Williams from Undergrads. I don't know if you've seen Undergrads. It was another one season MTV show where it was just about him and his friends, and like they're them going to college sort of in close proximity to each other. And I always loved that too, where it was just like, anybody who can write about a friend group that's really tight knit and like doesn't come off as sitcom-y and doesn't come off as like forced or boring. Like, I think a problem with a lot of sitcoms is like, why would these people hang out with each other? Like, and I'm not going to name drop anything in particular, but like that is a big issue I always have with like even like old and modern sitcoms, is like, where in the writing process, where was the chemistry defined? Because a lot of sitcoms lack that, I feel. So these writers who kind of sat down and really thought about all the chemistry and really kind of how to like form that into a friend group, and then also drew from their real lives and kind of put that in there. I'm always just stunned at that. I think all those writers I just listed absolutely do that. And then, as I mentioned, like, I just think kind of the unabashed nerdiness of the early Kevin Smith stuff has always stuck with me, of just like being able to talk about Star Wars in relation to something that you're, like that's going on in your real life. I think that's really impressive. And, that whole like, Death Star contractor thing in the first Clerks is still like one of the best bits of like dialogue exchanges ever written. So, I think I think kind of just like, when I think about writers I really like, and the ones I just listed, just like the good chemistry, and then just being able to unabashedly be yourself on the page. Absolutely. So, yeah.
I was going to say, if I had a nickel for every time I had a guest mention how Kevin Smith was a very good influence on their animation writing, I'd have 2 nickels, which is not much, but it's weird this happened more than once.
Who is the other one? I just want to know.
The other one is Mikey McGold, which at the time we're recording, his episode is actually the next episode coming out. So,
me and Mikey talk a bunch. We've worked on a couple things together.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. But I was gonna also say, I'm glad you mentioned Bill Oakley as well, because you were talking about like the relatable stuff, and I couldn't help but think of like Bill Oakley. Considering the fact that I had another buddy of mine who I've also previously had on the podcast actually appear on his own podcast to talk about the Principal and the Pauper, as well as have like a separate like uncut conversation with Bill Oakley, which was like really good, really in depth, talking about like, his writing and like his kind of career up to that point. So
sure. Yeah, he's both him and Josh are really interesting.
They really are.
I think I don't know, and like kind of I think if anybody watches Failing Upward, like they'll notice like a very strong like 90s sensibility.
Yes.
Like, so like obviously they were entrenched in that, and then I just wanted to bring up 2 other people live action, but Chris Viscardi and Will McRobb. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They did a show called Pete and Pete.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of my all-time favorite shows, like that was honestly going to be like my backup answer, because like Pete and Pete is like once again kind of coming at that like in that early era of Nickelodeon where they're like, we don't have anything, make something, and like they just had complete creative freedom to pretty much do whatever they wanted, and they created an entire world out of a suburban street.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I thought that was the coolest thing ever, and like it's this weird kind of surreal like reality. Like I don't know. I just really like that, and that also carries over into Failing Upward, kind of the surreal nature of things.
Yeah.
But like those two guys, like I think they're excellent, and I know they still work on stuff. I still see their names pop up. But that in particular, I think that is. Oh, they worked on Kablam, so obviously they helped create Kablam. So like, there's even like a little. I think if you in Pete and Pete, there's like a company that makes kind of like high end products or some sort of like consumer products called Krebstar. And in Kablam, if you look at, there's an episode with like a news ticker, and it's like sponsored by Krebstar, which I always thought was really cool. Like, oh, they're kind of like bridging their universes.
Gotta love that corporate synergy.
Yeah, corporate synergy. I always thought that was really cool. But those two guys as well, I just want to make sure their names got in there.
One of the things I've more or less noticed right off the bat as you're talking about like all these different influences and whatnot is you tend to have like a real good connection with slice of life stuff, or at least like average everyday stuff. What is it about that more or less that scenario that kind of opens your mind creatively? Like what is it about slice of life that you feel like most comfortable and like you really cherish?
It's easy to write. No, it's not. I actually think there's something very difficult to write about slice of life.
Right.
I think it's very hard to make a conversation seem real. Like I don't think a lot of people understand that until they either see a bad conversation in a movie or a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've always just been very intrigued by how to make a conversation feel natural. And that's what kind of tickles my fancy a little bit about it. But also I would say like maybe just the environments those usually take place in. I kind of going back to what I was talking about before, like there's something about that kind of like mid-20s vibe that I really like, where you're kind of finding out who you are in your mid-20s.
Right.
And I feel like it's weird. I was actually thinking about this recently, but like I think I'm kind of like, depending on where Failing Upward goes, I'm glad that I'm going to be able to write more episodes in my 30s, because now I'm not in the thick of it like I was when I created it.
Right.
And it's a little more retrospective now than it is like I'm writing this in the moment. Because I cringe about how like I would have approached it in the moment. I feel like there's a lot of great things that come out of like what you're feeling in the moment, but like I wouldn't trust myself to write something in the moment, to be honest. I would rather be more reflective. Like, I love these 5 episodes we did from a writing standpoint. I still think they're pretty good.
Right.
But I think, like, kind of now I can kind of go back in with some nuance. But but getting back to your question, I guess, like, there's just something about conversation that intrigues me. There's something about everyday life that intrigues me more than, like, a big comic book thing. But I'm also a huge comic book nerd, so I like that stuff. But from my perspective, like, there are people that can do that better than me. Yes. Like, I know I'm not going to be like a big action writer or whatever. I'd like to take a crack at it, but like I don't think I would be as comfortable as I would be just writing a story about kind of like 2 people growing up together. Yeah, I guess it's a comfort thing, and also I'm intrigued by making conversations real.
I mean, trust me, I think we all can think of at least one example, whether in film or TV or whatnot, to where we've seen that weird conversation that you just look at after it happens. You're like, no one talks like that. Who talks like that,
Yeah, I've seen a couple of movies like that recently. So,
exactly.
And it's like, once again, I don't like to throw anybody under the bus.
Right,
but
right.
Like, it's I've kind of made a habit out of that. Like, only recently have I took a couple swings at people on Twitter, but not here. We're not going to do that here. This is a positive podcast. We don't want to do that. I like how my answer was Mystery Science Theater, which is nothing but throwing people under the bus. But but okay. So that's interesting. I think Mystery Science Theater has more appreciation, like actual love for bad movies, than like any like modern critics.
I agree.
I think everything they do, they're self-aware that they're also kind of making a bad movie, right? Like
yes.
The whole Satellite of Love thing, it really looks really like hokey and stuff, like it's a B movie set. So I always resonated with that they're kind of expressing their love for this thing in a very unique way and kind of throwing things under the bus. But I think come like the 6th or 7th season of that show, a lot of the filmmakers they were doing, they were aware of Mystery Science Theater and they loved it. So I think there was this weird kind of like friendship that formed out of it. And I always thought that was really cool. But I try to keep things positive. I don't try to throw anybody under the bus.
I mean, to be fair, when it comes to Mystery Science Theater, it kind of, I mean, they always say that, like, parodies is a serious form of flattery. So, I mean, at the end of the day, like, especially seeing how they were just mainly joke around. Like, it's not like they were seriously being like, why would anyone watch this movie? This movie's absolutely god atrocious. There's no, like, they were enjoying, like, how silly it was or how outrageous or how over the top something was. They weren't trying to, like, break it down to be like, no one should ever watch this movie. It should be one of those, like, this is just hilarious. Laugh with us.
They would feature it if they didn't want people to watch it, right?
Exactly.
Like, this whole thing is like, like, I'm sure they've come across movies where, like, we can't do anything with this. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it was out of like a legitimate love for things. I think there is like an art to kind of making a cheesy movie, and I think there is kind of like something you can gain out of it. Like a lot of those movies that they covered were made, like on $10 in a dream. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and there's an inherent lovableness to a legitimately bad movie more so than a lot of cynical bad movies that are kind of going in with the intention of being really bad, like, because it's like, oh, we can kind of get notoriety because it is, we're making it bad. We're aware. I don't get as much enjoyment out of that. I like when people like legitimately like put a good foot forward, but it doesn't quite turn out the way they like. And I love that. Like, I think that is kind of art in its purest form, where it's like just a bunch of guys in the woods, got a camera, let's make a movie. Didn't come out great, but we tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, there were some of those filmmakers that turned around that they just absolutely could not help but love it, because they also understood, especially with, like you were saying, some of them had the budget of like $10 in a dream and maybe a drink in the freezer if it's still working.
Sure, yeah.
It's like,
maybe we can get Taco Bell after, guys. Maybe we can get Taco Bell. Like, let's see if it's in the budget.
It's like, if not Taco Bell, maybe McDonald's, and then they're just like, again.
Yeah. Listen, they're running a sale. Like, it's 2 burgers for 1. Okay, Taco Bell's not giving us that today.
Exactly.
But no, I prefer to kind of just like keep things like pretty copacetic. Like, I don't really like I don't necessarily. There's something that's kind of happened on the internet where everything's about like tear down culture now.
Yeah.
Which it kind of makes it makes me not like media as much sometimes, because it's like, if this is like the instantaneous reaction to it, but it is what it is. You can't really control that.
That's why I try to promote positivity when it comes to this podcast at the end of the day, because whenever I see people online like tearing something down, I just look at the same person and be like, are you even enjoying this? Like, are you having a good time? Then why further stick yourself in it?
People who make it their entire career to kind of tear things down these days, I mean, they clearly have an audience, so what do I know? You know what I mean? Like, but I just do wonder if it's just like, are you making time for yourself to actually enjoy things?
Exactly.
I would hope they are, and I'm sure they are, but it is one of those things, like you mentioned, that kind of passes through my head, where I'm just like, hope you're doing okay.
Well, speaking of enjoying things, how about we get to something that I actually do enjoy, and that is one of the series that we've more or less tap danced around at this point, and that is your series, Failing Upward. Now, you kind of hinted at it a little bit, but I'm genuinely curious, like, how did this more or less concept come to be about Failing Upward?
Sure, like the story of the show itself, or how I created. Like, I'm sorry, I just want to. Maybe I can tell you the whole thing, I guess. Yeah.
It's a podcast. Take as long as you need.
Yeah. So the origin of the show itself was literally, I was in a class and I needed to write something, and it was either the first 30 pages of a movie or a pilot for a TV show.
Okay.
And I was literally rewatching Mission Hill, and I was like, I want to do that, and I did that. Like, I wish I had like more of oh, it came from such a real place, which it did. Like, when I started sitting down and writing it was starting to come from a real place. But I think the initial kind of inspiration was like, I love these shows that lasted 1 season and never got heard from again, but are so inherently more creative than a lot of the sitcoms that are on TV right now. So I just had such a strong love for that kind of era of television, late 90s, early 2000s, slice of life animated stuff. And I'm like, I want to do that. Like, that sounds really, really fun. So I did, and I wrote my first draft, and it's so different from what's like on screen now. And as it is, it's something that developed over like initially over like 5 or 6 years until we got like, some initial first tests and everything. But yeah, it kind of came from I think the story about like Cody and JC kind of being long distance friends kind of came from, I would say, like, I had a couple of long distance friends. I was in college at the time, and I was kind of decentralized from like a lot of my friends, and like it kind of was birthed out of like short conversations you'd be having on the phone with people. And I was like, what if I did that as a show? Like, what if that was the crux of the show? Like, the relationship you have with friends who aren't in the same area as you, like friends you can't go to hang out with, but you trust so much that you're willing to open up to them over the phone. Right. And that's where that kind of came from, I would say. And yeah, that's kind of how the show started. Initially, the pilot was like how Cody and JC met. And then it ended with them parting ways. And kind of like becoming long distance friends. And I would say, like, I tried workshopping that pilot, so I still like it. It's still on it's actually a version of that is still in my portfolio of the initial pilot, because I still really like it, and I still think it's really strong. But kind of figuring out how to pitch that to a network where it's just like, okay, like, it looks like they're going to be roommates and it's going to be wacky shenanigans, but then they kind of go in different directions at the end, and like right. Their relationship is like that's the foundation of their relationship, was that one day together, and now they're friends in different areas. And it's just like, I was tearing out my hair. I was like, I do not know how to pitch this, but I like the concept so much. So somebody approached me at one point. Her name is Izzy Ray Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her. It's 8-Bit Izzy. She was a co-host on Pizza Party podcast.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. She had approached me, and she was like, I think I was doing a podcast at the time that was just talking to people. It was literally like a nothing podcast. But I had somebody on that she liked. It was a cartoon reviewer, and she really liked him, and she wanted to do cover art for the podcast, kind of like little promotional art for the podcast. And that's how kind of like our friendship started up. And then we got to talk about Failing Upward. We tried a few tests with her, and she did great. And with one of those is still up on the page and everything. And it looks cool. I still like it. Very different than what it is now. But we eventually, she was actually the one that came to me and was like, you should just do these as short episodes if everything's going to be on the phone. Like, you shouldn't worry about like, trying to make it this big, long, half-hour sitcom. Like, just make it like bite-sized. So I still credit her to like this day for really giving me that idea. Just really kind of changed my perception about like how to make it, and make it attainable. So through the years we did a couple different things and different tests until we did like an Indiegogo, and all our stuff was kind of put on there to show like how far we'd come, and we got like almost like $13,500 to do like a five episodes, and we're still in the process of doing those.
Right.
So that's kind of like a brief rundown of like where we've been and everything.
I mean, even then, just that like the beginning concept or whatnot, that kind of relatability that you had right off the bat, just talking about like having the friends that you're really close with, but like, obviously they're not going to be next to each other. They're going to be, who knows where they're going to be. They're two different places. Yeah, I don't think you even really specified where exactly they are, and good, keep that mystery up.
I mean, I would hope it's at least obvious that like Odie is in the city and JC is in suburbia. JC is living at home. But yeah, the idea of like, it's kind of not a specific, neither of them are super specific places.
Exactly.
Like we haven't really gone outside yet, like we've kind of been contained to the apartment or a coffee shop or the record store at this point. But, I'm hoping, if we get to do more, like we can kind of explore these locations a little bit more and still, like you said, be a little kind of like ambiguous about where this is, because that's always fun. Like, to break the illusion just a little bit, like I grew up Long Island, and New York City is like my city, like
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of the Cody stuff is kind of New York City-ish, but I've taken a lot from places I've been and kind of like put it all into there. But yeah, like I do kind of, it's funny that you bring it up, just like the kind of ambiguousness of where they are. And even in, the show as of now, like how they met and everything, there is an origin comic that I do like
Oh.
to point people in the direction of. It's on Newgrounds. Currently we're featured series, and if you click on our featured series thing, it'll take you to a playlist, and the comic is the first thing on there. So if you want to get a background on Cody and JC, if you want to spoil the mystery for yourself, there it is. But yeah, it's I like the kind of namelessness of places. I like, it could be any city, it could be any suburb. So yeah.
I mean, at least for me, like whenever I was watching the episodes that you have posted up or whatnot, like it gave me kind of that like almost immersion for me, because I could easily see myself in both situations, because I've been to like big city, I've been to suburbia, I grew up in the country out in the middle of nowhere, so I kind of get that like more or less like separation in a way. Like that's the one thing that I appreciated the more I watched the Failing Upwards, how relatable it was to be Cody and JC in these situations. Like, how important was it for you to illustrate that kind of relatability to your audience?
I think it's really important. I think if it's not relatable, it's not good. Like
Yeah.
it breaks down immediately if Cody and JC are just total jerks. And kind of going back to I keep bringing it up, but like kind of going back to the Pepper Ann thing, where it's just like Pepper Ann could be a jerk and she could be dumb, but like she kind of had like she was trying to do the right thing most of the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think kind of taking that core conceit and just being like, well, apply it to my own stuff. I think that was kind of like a guiding light for me, where it's like you want your characters to be flawed because like that's relatable, right? Like nobody's perfect,
Right.
but like you also want them to be good people inherently. So it's this balancing act of kind of doing both things. And one of the best comments I ever got, and I maybe gotten it twice. It was on a Newgrounds comment, and somebody was like, "I like that they call each other like each other's bullshit out. Like they don't let each other like go. Like they're not like passive friends. Like they're invested in each other's lives."
Right.
I think that lends to the relatability, because we always have that one friend who's willing to call us out, and they're like your best friend. So like, I think kind of like I think it's really important for them to be relatable and having just like the DNA of like actual people. Like, yeah, they kind of throw a pop culture reference out here and there, but like at the end of the day, like they're just normal people. And I think a lot of people have kind of come and asked me like, well, why are you animating it? Why isn't this live action? And I'm like, because I like animation.
Yeah.
Like I don't really have like a better answer. Like I find myself struggling where it's just like, this doesn't need to be animated. I'm like, well, it doesn't need to be live action either.
Yeah.
Like it could be either or. I don't understand like why there is an expectation put on animation. Like it could be anything. So I don't know. I think like I kind of lost my trail of thought. I apologize,
No, I mean,
but
I was
I think I think it is important to, no matter what you're doing, just to make your characters relatable. I
exactly.
think yeah, I just think that's really important.
I mean, I was gonna say like the people that come up to you, because I was gonna honestly ask that question as well, but I mean like you kind of more or less illustrated it. Like, yeah, it doesn't have to be animated, but it also doesn't have to be live action. Technically, it doesn't have to be anything. This is just
No,
your
it could
thing.
be a book.
Yeah,
It
it
could be
could
a book. It could be a spoken word thing. It could be an audio drama. It could be anything.
yeah.
Like there's no I think kind of approaching everything with the mindset of why does this have to be this is always like a little, I feel like it's limiting a little
Right.
bit. I mean, you can critique things. Like there's nothing wrong with like well-intended critique, but like if your first I feel like if your first thing is to come out and like swing and be like, this shouldn't be animated, it should be live action, get out of our community. Which, believe it or not, that was like the first comment we got on Failing Up when we put it up on Newgrounds. Um,
What?
Yeah. Somebody got. He didn't say get out of our community, but like it was a very like I don't understand why this is animated, and I kind of had to break it down of just like, well, yeah, it's like kind of like Mission Hill or Daria or stuff like that. Like Daria is another one.
There
It's
you go.
another. Susie Lewis, the creator of that's awesome. But yeah, like it was frustrating. It was really frustrating because like I just like animation. Like I don't really know how to answer that question. Like there's a lot of shows, like there's a lot of slice of life stuff that
Yeah.
like doesn't have to be animated, but it is. So I don't know. It's just kind of my take is like I just do it because I like it.
Exactly. That's what it should be at the end of the day, and that's one of the things I can really see with like with all the episodes that you have uploaded. I was gonna say like whenever you were talking about like one of the things you love is when people notice that they're calling each other out on their bullshit. That was the one that I you said that and I instantly thought of the episode. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but it's the one
Mhm.
where JC's in the record store and Cody's in the coffee shop. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, that's all my friends.
All my
Yes.
friends, there you go. Like that's exactly what it is because you can clearly see like them calling each other out on like their situation or whatnot. Plus, I think the way that animation lends itself in that one is kind of the vision or like the little like scenarios that you more or less played out as they're calling
Yeah.
each other out. Like Cody imagining his roommate being like this bizarre mad scientist before his skin like melts off, and
Yeah.
with JC like how she envisioned working before the reality of how things are working out in her job.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And it's like, even in that, like, like I specifically the JC one where she just imagines herself like she's in like a mental ward or something.
yep,
It's like, it's not that bad. Like, and Cody kind of being like, she's your cousin, like, it can't be that bad,
right.
like, and then also JC telling him to kind of be like, you should get to know Mark a little bit more, maybe, like, before you pass judgment on him. Uh, just like all, like, even if they're not specific experiences I've kind of like had necessarily where like these specific instances like oh you should open up more to your friend your roommate or something like they're universal I think and they're just like I think there's something that clicks with people. um yeah, I like using kind of those fantasy sequences to kind of take a glimpse into how they're envisioning their lives and how much like crazier they think they are than they really are and how like there's a I'm trying not to use the word mundane as much because I think mundane has like a negative connotation,
Right.
but maybe kind of how just like
How normal.
rooted in actual reality, right? Like actual kind of like things, and they're kind of seeing them as these like earth-shattering horrific events. Because I think that kind of comes back to me. I put a lot of like my fears and anxieties in the show. Like those are a lot of like how I kind of like when something bad happens, immediately my brain is just like, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. And you're
Yeah.
imagining the worst case scenario and you're kind of trying to rack your brain on how to get around it and everything. But it just seems like this impossibly huge problem. So like I love using animation to illustrate that. And I mean that might be a reason where I could throw out be like, the fantasy sequences are a great reason for it to be animated. Um but yeah, like yeah, the kind of like calling each other out thing. I think that is kind of the crux of the show is two friends who, just aren't afraid to kind of speak their mind to each other and
Yeah.
it's never a really negative way. They kind of throw a little jab here and there, but it's always friendly. They always care about each other. So yeah, I think that's a really cool part of the show.
I mean, it's something that I definitely appreciate as I watch. Plus, actually seeing the scenarios like play out both before and after the phone call. I mean, like I said, like for me, whenever I was watching this thing, like I totally got their situation. I totally related to their stuff. That's why I absolutely love and enjoy it. I mean, I know you said you kind of put your own fears into it. I imagine it's a little easier to do that because, in fact, you are the voice of Cody. You are the voice of one of the main characters for it. Was that always kind of more or less like the plan, or was that just kind of one of those like, you know, I know how I want this delivered, so let me be the one to do it?
It's a little bit of like all of the above. I think there's this kind of taboo against the self-insert, right? Like where
Right.
it's like, oh, this character's such a self-insert, and I'm like, yeah, like I don't know what you want me to say. Like, it's just that's just what I wanted to do with it. And Cody, it's funny because like Cody is me to an extent, but like it is me hyped up to like 11, where
Mm-hmm.
like anxiety thing is like actually a character trait with his inhaler and everything, which I don't use, but like, I was like, that's a cool visual signifier. Throw that in there. And like it is like JC is me though too. Like JC is very much me. Like that love of kind of like alt rock and everything, and kind of the pessimistic view on the people around you, even when they're trying to help you. Like I've been through that too, where it's like you're so dumb that you don't realize that people are trying to help you out. You're kind of just so focused on yourself like that. I've been through that like a million times. So, like as far as Cody goes, like, like you mentioned, like only I would be able to do the line reads. And I'm like, that was the thing. I'm like, I don't want to make anyone say this stuff. Like, I'm embarrassed saying it, but like it's so true to me, and I'm like, I want to get it out there, and I want it to have a voice that I think is appropriate. And like, if you ask me again, like if you ask me like now would I do it? Like, once again, this has been going on for a really long time, but like, would I do it again now? Probably not. I probably would be a little more like, get somebody else. Like, I want to focus on the writing. I have had to do so many like ADR and retakes like so far after the fact that like I'm like, can I even still do that? And it takes me a while to get that. And I have nothing but respect for like voice actors who make it their career to like get it right. You know what I mean? And like really hone characters. And like I'm out here just like doing me. Like I'm literally doing a nerdier version of myself. So like like I would say it was at the time. I was like, I do feel like I'm the only person that like should do this because I don't want to subject other people to it.
Right.
But I think I'd be a little more lenient now. I think I'd be like, let's see if somebody else can do it. Because I was interested in voice acting for a while. I really did want to try to do that, but then I realized I'm like, this grind is crazy. Like I can't. I have nothing but respect, especially for the voice actors on our show, specifically like Maddie Morris and Brittany Lauda, who play JC and Piper, respectively. They're incredible. Like I mean, like Maddie is on Trigun now, and Brittany is on JoJo. So like they're incredible voice actors, and I have nothing but respect for them, and I think they just like Maddie in particular, like I remember she came in as a replacement for another voice actress, and I showed her like this is what we did so far, and like this is the character. She got it immediately.
Yep.
Like her takes, I think we did like 2 hours for like the whole series. I think that was 2 or 3 hours for the whole show. The episodes we have so far, and instantly slipped right into the character, got it, and like clicked immediately. And then like Brittany is just a joy to work with, and she brought so much energy and vibrance to Piper, and like just did it like without even like trying to really like I think she just inhabited the character like immediately. There was no like they make it seem effortless, which is so cool. When and like kind of going back to me with Cody, it's just like there's a lot of effort to make it not sound bad. Like, and there's lines where I go back, I'm like, oh, I telegraphed that a little too hard. Like I went a little too hard in on that. But yeah, I maybe now I would change my mind about Cody to voicing Cody.
I mean, if I do say so myself, I sincerely think that, despite all the anxiety you may have about your performance or whatnot, I think you did a good performance regardless. Like I sincerely believe Cody in the series, and I really do. Again, I relate to how he's feeling. I relate to how JC's feeling. Like the performances everyone in that series is giving is probably some of the top-notch voice acting I've seen in all of indie animation. So you're doing a really good job with that.
Thank you. That's really kind of you. That's really, really kind of you. When we get compliments on that, like it always makes me feel good, because like I could tell you, like between me editing this and like the animators having to listen to this dialogue over and over again, we're sick of it. We're so sick of it at this point. I haven't really even talked about the crew yet, but like like we have like Jack Bodler and like Ninehammer working on this, and they're both incredible. Like they like the stuff they do with like these simple conversations, and the expressions they're able to pull off are just like phenomenal in my opinion. And like I don't know. I think I remember Jack kind of came to me as like, if I have to hear you like say this one line again, I'm gonna like lose my mind. And I'm like, like just take a break. But everything's in like good fun. Like we're not like serious about it.
Right.
like, you know, we have these conversations just about just like, oh my God, this one line. You know, like we have to, you know, hear Piper again, like waving to JC on the ground, you know, like we're going to tear our hair out. But no, it really makes me feel good to like to see that like the voice acting is getting like positive reception, because for me at least, that is like one of the things that I'm most self-conscious about in terms of the show. But I'm glad that people are digging it, so that's awesome.
I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, like just with how you're presenting Failing Upward, like I can easily see why a lot of people are absolutely grasping on loving it. I'm absolutely loving it and the experience I got to have with it. I'm curious if for you, out of what we've been able to see so far, do you have a personal like favorite moment or favorite conversation, favorite line? Like, do you have a favorite moment of Failing Upward so far?
Sure. I really love the last episode. I think the last episode out of all of them, from a writing perspective, like that was my favorite. Because it was the first time where like not everything was gags. You know what I mean? Like not everything was like silly kind of banter. Like we did kind of get a deeper moment with JC there, and we did kind of like get to kind of see her like, you know, open up a bit.
Yeah.
Which is also terrifying, because it's like, if you're kind of, when you start to develop characters, it's really scary, because it's like, I hope they like the way we're going, because like this is what we're kind of sticking with, and people really seem to grasp onto it. And I kind of wrote a thing about this on Newgrounds. I was like, I was so scared that like when we put this out, that people were just going to be like, this is cheesy, this is too cheesy, because really it was like, it really was like my kind of like, it was like an homage to John Hughes type stuff, where characters would kind of finally open up after being prodded for so long.
Right.
So like, to kind of like grasp onto something I have like immense respect for in that guy's like you know, filmography, like, and if I did that wrong and I messed up, I would, oh man, I would not.
You never live it down.
I would continue regardless, because you know, we're gonna see this through. But like, it was scary. It was just scary. It was really, really scary. I remember hitting upload on that and being kind of terrified and being like, oh my God, like, this is a very kind of like, it's not like super sad or anything, but it is a character kind of like breaking habit and like telling Cody about like this thing that kind of messed her up a little bit, and how somebody was there for her. And it was scary. It was scary because like it's scary because it's a little real for me, I guess, in the sense that like, when I think of a lot of other shows or animation, like the big emotional crux is a big emotional crux. Like it is something that the whole show has been building to, and it's like a breakup or somebody falling in love, or like, you know, just like somebody dying, like something that really universally resonates with people. Whereas like this is a very niche thing. You know, this is a very kind of like, this is somebody's moment in their life that's very special to them. So I was scared that that was not going to resonate with people because it wasn't this universal thing. So the fact that it did, it makes me very happy. And I think that whole sequence with her kind of talking about her like backstory and everything was like I like this. This is cool.
I mean, I think it was very well executed on your end. I mean, like I said, again, you know, it's one of those like, it's a very relatable moment to a lot of people. Like, yeah, it may be a little niche to some people, but like, I think just that having that moment of vulnerability, I think that's a very universal concept that people can latch on to, and like people understand like opening up just that little bit more than they anticipate. I mean, I think you guys did fantastic. Sure. You guys did a fantastic job really executing that, not fully playing it up for laughs until like after obviously the moment with the, you know, hey, JC's
hi, yeah. Yeah, and it's like, you know, we let it breathe.
Yes.
I think that's a really important thing in writing, is to let your moments breathe. I feel like we're kind of in a, especially in film, like we're in such a drought of like movies that let their characters like have moments. Like everything is a quip now, right? Yep. Like everything is a quip. Like no characters are allowed to really have that moment of just realness. Unless it's, like I said, that emotional crux that hits at the end, or rather crescendo, like emotional crescendo, rather. Like I what was I saying? I just think it was really important, I guess. And I think in a world of kind of like of films and TV that kind of is like onto the next thing. Like we don't have time to kind of like, you know, sit in that emotion. It was really important for me to do that. So yeah, I think letting it breathe is a really important thing to me.
Well, it was very well done, and from what I've been able to see so far with Failing Upward, I've really enjoyed what you've been able to present so far, and
Thank you.
it makes me excited for what you guys are going to be presenting next. I can only imagine how excited you and the crew are for presenting the next couple episodes or so.
Yeah. So we have two more episodes left in our 5 episode run. We're just about to finish up keyframing for it, which is really exciting. We've gotten a much better pipeline down. There's been too much downtime between these episodes, and it's mostly just been because we're just three guys, like 3, 4, 5 guys
Fair enough.
that kind of just, like working on this thing. And we're hoping to get the next episode out. I don't want to put a date on it, but like the fall of this year, we're
Okay.
hoping it's gonna. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
But yeah, like we are excited. We do want to do more. We started a Patreon, which like we're kind of like, we're posting on it every 2 weeks basically. We have like a set schedule. Like if you pay $5 a month, like you get to see behind the scenes stuff. Like $2 a month gets your name in the credits. So we do want to kind of like give our viewers something for what they're giving us for sure. And we also just want to make sure we're hitting those deadlines of just like, okay, we need to have something for the Patreon this week, and like no questions asked. It just needs to get out there. So if you're interested in joining us, we're very consistent. It's patreon.com/Wayback Studios, WAEBAK, Wayback Studios. If you want to get more Failing Upward, help us out there.
If nothing else, I'm sure to have that link in the description below, as well as the other ones when we do our pluggables at the end of the podcast. But like, it's really cool that you have that more or less developing and continuing as well. But you also have your own other stuff that you're trying to develop, get off the ground, do some more stuff with. One of the things that you more or less led me to is a show that you're developing called Starstruck. Now,
yes.
I with what little taste and hints I've been able to get on there through Twitter and YouTube or whatnot, I'm very intrigued. So I'm curious, what is the concept for Starstruck, and how did you develop it?
Starstruck is about a human from Earth who's the PA to an alien rock star. And her name is Harper, and she wants to be a rock star as well. So she's kind of on this tour, kind of helping out the biggest alien rock star in the galaxy, more or less, or in the universe, rather. So the whole show is kind of like them going on misadventures and turning the kind of like mundane tasks of a PA into these kind of like intergalactic adventures. So as far as we've kind of done so far, we've written a pilot. We completely voiced the pilot. We got like a bunch of amazing voice actors to like do it with us. Jenny Yokobori from The Simpsons and Hello Kitty, and then Joey Richter and Lauren Lopez from Star Kid. So like, and my friend Dom Farah is helping me produce it. Dom's been in the YouTube game for years. So like, it's a really exciting project, and we're kind of in a middle area with it right now as far as kind of like what we want to do with it. We want to go indie or try to pitch it around. We're just kind of at this point, we're kind of just like, we wrote the pilot episode, we were really happy with it, we voiced it, we're really happy with it. We're kind of having trouble finding financing to kind of get it done,
right?
At least as an animatic. We're trying to figure out the logistics of it. So we kind of scaled back, and we're like, let's just make a Bible at this point. Because yeah, like a Bible and a pitch deck. So that's what we've been kind of working on. So, just based off the pilot, we kind of started throwing ideas out there about what this universe would be and everything. And kind of go back to your first question, which I kind of trailed off on. It is kind of like a story about like Harper, who's this girl, and she has this dream, but she's kind of in a place where like she really has to like work to make it happen.
Yep.
And it's all those annoyances of being like the assistant, right? Of just like, go find my cat, you have to do this meeting for me because I don't want to, or like, you have to deal with this fan for me because I don't want to do the meet and greet or whatever. Like, it's kind of like her having to do all this stuff with the dreams of being like a rock star. And kind of, I don't know necessarily where I was like, oh, this would be so cool in space. I think, like, it could have just been like a general kind of like Almost Famous type thing where it's like the kid on the tour with the rock band. But I think around the time I wrote Starstruck, I was just really into the Disney TVA stuff.
Okay.
Like, I was really into Amphibia specifically. I was like, Amphibia is so cool, and I would love to do a show in that vein, kind of that kind of wacky slapstick stuff. But then also, and and the deeper lore and story, but also kind of throw my 90s-ness with the rock musician stuff.
Right.
So yeah, and then like, I mean, like, what, and I'm a huge fan of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So kind of the
Yes.
absurdity of that thrown in, and then also Bill and Ted, massive Bill and Ted fan. So like literally like when Dom and I have been like writing stuff, I'm just like, it's got to be as like the concepts have to be like Bill and Ted dumb, I guess, at first, and then we kind of expand upon that and like throw kind of like the work culture stuff in, where it's just like you're kind of satirizing, like that rise to the top, basically. So yeah, I mean, and to let you know about the characters, Harper Haragi, girl from Earth, wants to be a rock star so bad. Well, thinks that the guy she's on the tour with, Azrael Phaser, who's like this really big rock star, the coolest guy ever, wants to get in good with him, like really wants to like impress him with her guitar skills and everything. Her best friend on tour is named Court, who's kind of like this fish girl alien who's the cynic, and she's the stage hand and does all the effects, and she's been there for a while, and she's trying to keep Harper's expectations in check.
Right.
And that's kind of like the main three characters like of the show, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, like, I wish I had a little more to tell you, but we're kind of trying to keep certain things under wraps. But like,
That's fair.
we've announced certain things on Twitter. If you scroll through the Twitter Starstruck tune, which I'm sure you'll link to, but you can see a little bit of everything there. And then there's an animatic clip. If I don't know if you came across that, but
I did.
yeah. That's kind of the pilot and everything, and we want to do more of that, and we're trying to find the best way to do it. Kind of wanted to say this before with Failing Upward, but like, and I don't mean to go on too long of a tangent, but
Oh, hey, you're good. You're good.
the animation is really hard. I know there's a lot of people kind of seeing the studios right now and how the lack of output is frustrating them, and everyone's saying go indie, but indie is very, very difficult.
It is.
Like, there's going to be 3 big indie shows, and everyone else is kind of just going to be below the radar. Like, and kind of convincing people to give you money to do something that has like a 1 in a million chance of really blowing up, and then like, and as opposed to like, I'll give you guys money to do something that's under the radar, they're not going to give you money. I know I hate to sound really cynical about that, I apologize, but it's I guess I'm just frustrated with, it's just like, so many people are like, just go indie, you don't need studios. It's like, but you do need money. Like, that's always going to be a thing. Like, and you need a good amount of money because you want to make sure you're paying your artists really well. And like I think I think of this tweet from Aaron Long a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Aaron, Sublo and Tangy Mustard.
Absolutely.
Where he kind of like talks just about like, like, it's no real indie industry.
Right.
Most people doing indie are, like kind of what I said, like 3 guys in a basement. You know what I mean? Like, just doing something because they want to do it. So like, it's just frustrating because it's like, I think this would really click with the indie crowd. I think this is like a cool concept. And yeah, we do want to do it. It's just that struggle of like, how do we do it? Like, how, like, lucky with Failing Upward, we got the money for Failing Upward. How do you repeat that? How do you get lightning in a bottle twice? I think my favorite example, and what we want to do an animatic pilot of it, but like my favorite example is Carl Hydrika, who did Becky Prim.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. I'm sorry. But his stuff is excellent, and Becky Prim is like one of the best like proof of concept things I've ever seen put out, where it's like, this is the show, And even though it's an animatic, people immediately latched onto it, and I wish we would normalize that a bit more. I think I want to say like I forgot who said that on Twitter recently that like this needs to be normalized more. But like somebody was following on Twitter just said that recently. I'm like, yes, absolutely 100% agreed. Like animatic pilots should absolutely be a thing. There's a Mission Hill episode out there that's just storyboards.
Right.
And it's the best episode of the show. So like I think things have the ability to catch on even in a early rough draft phase of what they will be one day.
Yeah.
But once again, just the indie sphere is very competitive. There's a ton of people trying to do things. Like not everybody has access to the resources certain shows have. And it's just one of those things that, going back to what we were saying, is like, do we want to pitch this to a studio or do we want to press on to find a way to do indie? We'll see where it goes. But really excited about it. Regardless, it's something that's really close to my heart, and like I really like where we plan the first season to go and beyond that as well. But like if you guys if anybody out there is listening, like please like check it out.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm gonna recommend everyone check it out anyway, because I remember like just seeing the little bits I have both from the Twitter and seeing that little animatic short or whatnot. Like I love the energy of it. I love the vibe of it more than anything else. That like excitement that's more or less coming from Harper alone is something that I think is really going to carry that series whenever you get that developed a lot more. And I mean, like, to go back to your point about the indie sphere, like, just like what you said, a lot of people are like, oh, you should totally go indie with it. You don't need the studios. Yeah, but the studios have money, which is the one thing the indie sphere needs.
Yeah, nobody's got money out here. It's tough, and there have been success stories. Like, I love, always will actually have Zach's pen on me today.
Yes.
But Long Gone Gulch, like I think Long Gone's success as a Kickstarter is what really got me to kind of like do Failing Upward as a Kickstarter.
Okay.
I think how they planned it out and got everybody rallying behind them and delivered something that was fantastic. It was great. I thought it was really inspiring. And yeah, I think there are success stories like that, but the reality is a lot of people don't have that. And I think you kind of got to do it as like a passion thing sometimes, and you got to like really work at it and make it a side hustle. Like can't be your full-time day job.
Yeah.
Because you don't have money to pay people, and like you're probably not going to get money from it. Like you could be smart about it. Like you can try to start merchandising early. Like Digital Circus did and stuff like that. I feel like if there's one benefit to indie right now, I think we are seeing what is like getting people the financing. Like specifically with Digital Circus, like I was very impressed that they were able to tap into government funding for that show. I was like, that's really cool. With Viv stuff, like the merchandise is really kind of getting people excited for it. That's all great stuff. I think that's we're in a we're very lucky. If not us, the next generation of animators is very lucky to basically have a crash course to see how to get their indie show up and running.
Right.
And then they have stuff to see how not to do it. But like, it's cool. I think it's really cool. It's frustrating, but I'm excited regardless. I do think Starstruck is in the cards somewhere. It's just kind of one of those things where like we're still trying to get it together.
I mean, I can fully understand where you're coming from that. It just leaves me curious because from what little bit I have been able to see from Starstruck, I'm really excited for it. So it leaves me wondering, what are you hoping to see from Starstruck as you go forth and try to make it a thing?
I guess in terms of like, the story, or is in terms of just like kind of fan interaction? Because I can answer both of those too.
Both wouldn't hurt.
Yeah. I think the story, I just want to tell a story about just like the realities of kind of trying to make it up through that like dream scenario where it's like not everything always goes as planned. Like you can be as optimistic as you want, but like, you kind of got to keep your head on straight too. And that's kind of like Harper's struggle throughout the show. And then I don't know, I just hope fans see that and they're like, oh, that's me, like with my dreams, and I really want to do that, and I hope they kind of take lessons from it, where it's just like not to get too into like your own dream. Obviously, like really go for it, but like understand that there are always going to be limitations on things, and like, you know, and understand that there's always going to be roadblocks that you're going to have to figure out a way around. So like I would love to see like fans really get into that. But also, I mean, like I want to see fans get into the wacky sci-fi stuff. Like that's the most fun. That's like all the fun stuff, like where it's just like, you know, like weird laser guitar battles and like, you know, VR systems that can like transplant you into your own head to like go over your musical history and stuff like that. Like it's just like kind of taking these mundane concepts like MP3 players and putting like a sci-fi twist on it. Yeah, I don't know. That's just a little hint of kind of what we're doing, but yeah, I don't know. I don't want to spoil too much, but those were kind of ones that I was just going to throw up for free, I guess.
You tease quite well.
If you like isekais, kind of like that a little bit, you know, human girl in an alien world. So yeah, sure.
I mean, regardless, I think it's a really good concept, and I can't wait to see what more you're going to be able to do with that. But on top of doing all the stuff for your own stuff or whatnot, you're also taking the opportunity to obviously, you know, write, you know, for other stuff as well. One of the biggest ones that I really wanted to talk about, and one of, I guess the more newer one that got announced recently, is you were announced to be a writer for the upcoming Shockwave Animations Animation Station. Now,
Animation Station. Oh, go ahead.
Now, I was just gonna ask, like, Animation Station, how exactly did you get that opportunity to basically write for an animated talk show?
Yeah, it kind of just fell in my lap.
Okay.
Like, yeah, it's the first time anything like that's happened to me, where somebody was like, "Hey, do you want to write for this?" But it's basically a quick backstory of what happened was that Zach, who's Zach Wood, who's the lead animator on that show, he just started following me on Twitter. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like, this dude's got a bunch of followers. It's always nice to be recognized by cool people.
Right.
I just saw he posted, like, it's so hard to find indie animators. Oh, indie animation writers. And I was like, I'm an indie animation writer. Is that why you followed me? Like, so I just messaged him. I was like, hey, heard you're looking for indie animation writers. I'm an indie animation writer. He's like, yeah, I wanted to get in contact with you. It's like, would you like to come work on Animation Station? Gave me a quick pitch and everything. And, you know, the crew there kind of also filled me in on stuff. Said, you know, it's a little Space Coast, little Eric Andre, but for indie animation and kind of to help indie animators get the word out about their shows.
Right.
So immediately I was like, yeah, like I grew up on Space Ghost. Space Ghost is like one of my all-time faves. Like I love the vibe of that show. And that's kind of how I got into that. Like, you know, it's this weird thing that kind of just like a bunch of wires crossed in the right way where like I was like, okay, now I'm working on this thing. And I wrote the first episode. I think I finished it like almost 2 months ago now, I think.
Oh, wow.
Close to 2
Okay.
And it should be out I'm not spoiling anything, but it should be out in July. They haven't given a specific date yet, but I believe it's July.
I thought they announced it because I know it's Evan.
There was an announcement of all the guests, and then recently there was a little teaser that came out, and that I believe was like, oh, it's coming out in July. And yeah, you know, we had a really good time writing it, and I got to sit in on the interview sessions and everything.
Oh, wow.
And that was really fun. Little anxiety inducing to hear, like, it's weird because like I spent like my whole life writing stuff for myself. So like when I hear myself or like close friends say my dialogue, I'm not as like, but like when it's people you don't really know saying your dialogue, you're like, like is that bad? It's because the voice actress is incredible who plays Millie. I believe it's Lakira is her name. I think I pronounced it wrong. I apologize, but she's fantastic. It's such an excellent job and like really brought that dialogue to life. But for me, it was just like, oh God, like, is it good? Is it good? I can't tell. Like, is she having fun doing this? Like, I can't, like, it was a little scary. But no, eventually I kind of like settled down. I was like, okay, just relax. Like it was, it is one of those things where it's just like, it's also not my project, you know, it's Naya who made it. And like, she's fantastic. And like, it was just me kind of being brought in to write it, you know, like I didn't create it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was told the bullet points, like, we want this. And I was like, I can do that. And I did it. And, it was just, it's a new experience for me, kind of having somebody else like read my stuff that's not written, it was not created by me, I guess. So like, it was scary, but it was cool. It was cool. Like I was really into it.
I mean, I'm glad it seemed like more or less a unique opportunity for you in the first place, like getting the chance to write for someone else's like little indie animation thing and really bring forth like a really cool concept to reality. You know, having people interview, having indie animation people interview indie animation people in this fun, silly little style or whatnot. I mean, as a person that also interviews indie animation people, I'm always going to be encouraging people, interview indie animation people. Take a shot every single time I said indie animation right there.
Yeah, really.
But regardless,
no, I'm going Gene.
but regardless, like I love the concept in the first place, and to hear obviously like how unique of an experience it's been for you, especially getting to sit in on some of those conversations, especially seeing some of the lists of the creators that are going to be appearing on there, and whatnot. Some of which I've had on this podcast, some of which I wish to have on this podcast. Like it's really cool to have this kind of more or less unique opportunity. I can only imagine how exciting and either exciting or how anxious you must be to actually see those come to fruition and see how everyone's going to enjoy it.
I'm definitely a little anxious in terms of just like, once again, just like it's something I wrote, and I hope that I mean, I liked it when I wrote it and everybody else seemed to like it, but it's just like, I hope it clicks, you know, like I think it will. But I'm really just excited to see the animation because I haven't seen a whole lot yet, but like, you know, it's cool. Like I think this is a great format. And I don't want to give too much away about the show because like I know a couple things, but like I'm really excited to see a certain aspect of the show that like I want to have more involvement in as it goes along.
Okay.
I was talking to the team. I was like, I have a bunch of great people to recommend for this one thing. But I'm really excited for that. And just where I know the show is going and what we're going to get to do is really exciting, and it's really different, and it's very outside of my comfort zone, but in a good way. I'm like, yes, it's still, I mean, kind of going back to what we were talking about, it's still people talking, right? Like, it's still, even though it's a kind of free-form interview, I'm still writing these questions, and I'm still trying to make them as kind of relevant and fun and punchy as I can, and make them sound real. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm very, very excited for what happens. It's this month or in a couple days, in 2 days within the month. And yeah, they're saying they have a great pipeline in place for it to get episodes out, and I'm excited. I think it's gonna be really cool, and honestly, I would love the opportunity to work on more indie stuff. Like, you know, I think the thing with writing, unfortunately, is like, you know, specifically in animation, everybody kind of already has like their idea, right?
Yeah.
And like, we're already spending so much money, and rightfully so, on animators and everything. It's like I, the creator, can just write it myself. Like I don't need help writing this. But I would love, I mean, like, you know, I would love to write on other shows. Like there's like a bunch of other indie shows I would love to write for.
I mean, I can only imagine. And look, as someone who is also writing for indie animation for someone else, like I'm helping the person that helps me out with the podcast, Tipsy J Hearts. I'm the one that's helping out with the writing when it comes to the Evil Little thing, the little series that she's more or less creating or whatnot. So like, it's certainly a unique process, and like, at least for me with what I'm doing, I'm hoping that I'm able to like translate her thoughts properly, more or less, at the end of the day. So like, I can only imagine for you getting the opportunity to work on some other like cool indie stuff would be like, it'd be interesting to see in like what different scenarios and what different animation projects, like what you could lend to their writing team and really help them out. But I mean, at the end of the day, kind of like what you illustrated, we've already are spending so much when it comes to animation and stuff. Like the writing, you know, it more or less like falls back on the creator. But you know, especially with how tight knit the community can be at times. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see how
Yeah.
you don't get the opportunities at some point.
Yeah, I think, this is, once again, it's a blossoming community. We're still in our infancy. You know what I mean? We're not like, we have a couple hits. There's obviously Hell of a Boss and Lackadaisy and Digital Circus. Like, those are our three big, big hits right now. But, we're not, once again, kind of going back to the Aaron Long thing, it's not the indie industry yet.
Yes.
Like, it's still mostly people working out of their houses. We don't have offices. We don't have like health care plans. We don't have all this stuff. So I completely understand the hesitancy to start a big team, especially writers. Like, if you're out there with your own idea and you know the way you want it to go and you know the way the dialogue's supposed to flow, write it.
Yes.
That's fine. But if it does get to a point where it's like, oh, I'd love to see somebody else's take on this. Like, I would love to do that for people. I would love to have people guest write for Failing Upward or Starstruck or what we're doing. Yeah. So, like, there are shows like right now that I would love to work on, but I understand like why why it's not really a thing right now. So
right. I mean, I can only imagine. Plus, I was gonna say, hey, if you I don't know how well you could talk to Shockwave Animation, but if you need a future guest, may I recommend Tipsy herself, because I think she would be a fantastic guest to talk about the Eva Little thing and such. Plus, she can get crazy with the antics if need be.
Sure, yeah. Like, I would love to keep recommending guests like that. We definitely have like a running list of like, who do we want for like upcoming episodes. And I know the first season or so has been announced, but like if we keep going, we're gonna need more people. So absolutely, that's definitely someone we'll have in mind.
Let's see, I can go through the list. Let's see, we got Tipsy, Alex Barari. We got
you wrote a whole list before this, so you're just gonna try to pitch me on everyone.
I'll say, look, just literally go to my YouTube page, look up indie animation projects, like the playlist I have on there. Just anyone on that list, bring them on and have fun with them.
Yeah, it's funny because like everybody is like, oh, do I need to be like a character when I'm on this show? And I'm like, no, it's actually funny if you're not.
Yeah.
Because like if it's just you bouncing off of like what we're doing with Millie and everything, that makes it even better. That's what makes Space Ghost so good, right?
Yeah.
Like not everybody in Space Ghost Coast to Coast is like ready to do an interview necessarily. There's obviously exceptions, like Conan O'Brien, the Fire Ant episode is he is like barbing with the writers so hard. Like he is like going toe to toe with the writers and the interviewers so hard. Like it's amazing. But then you have, like someone, I don't know off the top of my head. Like,
someone like an Adam West or whatnot.
Yeah, who doesn't he's just kind of befuddled by everything in a good way. It's great. But like, it's that kind of duality of like, yes, we can have people, but it's even funnier if like you're just confused.
Exactly.
Because like, we can have fun with that in editing and stuff like that. Like, and it's we never want to do it to somebody's detriment, but like, it's just fun to kind of like take a response and kind of maybe throw it out of context or something. And like, that's what was once again, so great about Space Coast. And, I was told like we wanted the kind of eeriness and spontaneity of Eric Andre as well. And, which is, I mean, like that is like Space Ghost. I feel like is something I'm like I know that in and out, and I know I've watched a lot of Eric Andre, but like that was a little daunting to me because it's like that dude's a genius. Like that guy is the genius of making people feel uncomfortable and unwelcome. And I'm like I can try, and I hope we kind of start doing that. I hope we kind of hit those goals that people are expecting from that kind of influence. But it was a little daunting. I was like, oh boy. Those are big shoes to fill.
I can only imagine.
There's a formula. I feel like with Eric Andre, it's anarchy. Like it's hard for me to kind of like sit in there and capture that. But I was very happy to see it regardless because I was like, well, there's something there too, and I would like to tap into that.
Space Ghost is controlled chaos. Eric Andre is just chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Space Ghost, everything is micromanaged, right? Like down to the editing, because it's something that's done in animation. So like, there is a formula to it. There is a story. There is like a narrative that they're trying to weave as absurdist as it may be. But Eric Andre, it's whatever he feels like. Like Absolutely. It's whatever he thinks is going to be funny in the moment, and it can change on at the drop of a hat. And like, I would love to capture some of that. I hope as we go along, like we can figure a way to like really integrate that in. I'm really excited for that.
I can only imagine how excited you are. I mean, think about just all the opportunities that you've had so far, like whether it is with Animation Station or the stuff that you've created yourself. Just think of all these different opportunities, different things. Hell, take it a step back, thinking of your art journey as a whole. Like, are you more or less amazed with how far you've been able to develop as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought we'd be able to do any episodes of Failing Upward. Like, I thought this was going to be something that was going to be in the back of my head for forever, and I just go get a job, doing whatever, which, there's nothing wrong with that, and probably something I'm going to be doing to get money anyway soon. But, like,
Right.
the fact that I even have the chance to do that, I feel like the idea that, like, oh, wow, this is something that came out and the people responding to it, I think in terms of my creative journey, that's, like, really fulfilling. And, like, I think, anybody would say that. I just think it's really cool. And, like, I think kind of going back to what I said about just, like, being older and now, and, like, if we do more Failing Upward, like, the idea of getting to write it, from an older perspective and being like, oh, I remember that in my 20s. Let me flip that on its head. And, like, because I'm not in the moment, I'm not so hyper focused on, like, this is the way I see things and this is how it needs to be. And, like, I'm a perfectionist and I will not have it any other way.
Right.
Now I have a little more room to kind of be like, I want to do it this way. Like, because, like, I'm far back enough from it now where I'm just like, I can take that moment in my life and subvert it and do something really weird with it, or really interesting, I guess. Yeah, and going back to John Hughes, like, that dude was in his 40s when he was writing about teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and yet nobody got teenagers better than him. Like, nobody did. And I think there is kind of like, and I think there's something to be said about, your creative journey and being able to reflect on stuff rather than kind of create it in the moment. I know I've said that like 30 times, but, like, I really do believe that. I really do believe, like, you're probably better off writing something, that means something to you about a certain time in your life after that time has passed.
Right.
There are examples of people who really well, and I have nothing but admiration for them, but, like, usually you get older and you're like, I would have done that differently. I would have written that differently. Like, from my perspective now, I wouldn't have said that thing or whatever. But yeah, like, I've been there too, for sure. Going back to early drafts of Failing Upward, I'm like, ugh. Like, I wouldn't like have that thought process today. But, like, it is something I feel like, in terms of my creative journey, I'm very happy with where I am now. And I think, I'm excited to see where it goes. I'm excited to do more Starstruck, more Failing Upward. If the universe will allow us to.
Well, how about for this next question, if I may, let's look a little further. In fact, let's have a little fun with looking further and give you more or less the dream scenario, if I may. Let's say I am Big Shot Mr. Moneybags. I come to him like, look, Gary, we know you can do some incredible stuff. We've seen what you've been able to produce for yourself. We've seen what you've been able to do to put out there for others. We know there's something here. You just need a little extra platform, a little push to really get you to that point.
Okay.
We have access to everyone and anyone in whatever industry possible, and more money than should be possible. You really should be, compensating the animators that strike at the time of recording, at least. Really. And really important to make sure that they're compensated, healthcare, all stuff like that. But we'll focus on them in a little bit. We promise. Right now, we're focusing on you and you alone. If given this opportunity, what would be the dream Gary Trimarchi project?
Oh boy. My attention is really divided between Starstruck and Failing Upward right now.
Okay.
I feel like that's really difficult because, like, my instinct is like, Starstruck is this, like, giant space adventure, right? And, like, it could benefit from, like, a lot of, like, funding. And I would love to, especially with the music stuff, like, the idea of getting to work with, like, people, like, in the, like, I mean, like, this is a weird kind of, like, pull, but, like, one of my favorite musicians, Matt Mahaffey, actually did the Rise of the Ninja Turtles soundtrack. He's been a musician for years and years and years and years, a big alternative guy. I would love for him to work on Starstruck. Like, that is, like, my dream composer for that show. But kind of going back to Failing Upward, like, I don't know, like, the idea of, like, doing, like, a movie finale for Failing Upward is also really appealing to me. Like if I had gone far enough through Failing Upward to the point where I'm like, could we potentially do like an hour and a half finale movie or something? Like that's really cool. Yeah, you got me at a weird point where I'm like, I would love to fund Starstruck as an entirely as a show, but Failing Upward movie finale would like I would love to do that. But
how about compromise? Compromise.
okay.
I give you the fundings and the ability to where you can have just a full on studio. You have the studio in place so you could be able to
The
produce
studio?
film.
I mean, then I would do both. Then I would just do both.
Exactly.
Like, yeah. If I had a studio and like I think there are and this is like to kind of like talk about the animation situation again, like I think there are so many talented animators out there right now, and like I sympathize with so many of them in terms of just like the lack of jobs right now. I would it would do nothing but like fill my heart with joy to like make sure they were able to work,
Right.
And get paid and everything, and have a career. Like kind of going back to what I was saying before, like the indie animation industry, unless you're like Spindlehorse, you're not. There's not a whole lot of like options for you as an animator to have a full-time job right now in the indie sphere. I hope there is. I hope we get to a point where there's like healthcare through like indie studios and stuff like that. And that would be, yeah, I mean, when you said studio, absolutely. Like, that would be my first concern. It's like, let's get all these animators and writers like staffed up,
Yep.
make sure that they're getting paid,
Yep.
and getting healthcare and everything. That's all really important to me. So like, yeah, if you gave me a studio, I'd probably do that. I'd just take all of my favorite animators and writers and just have them work. I mean, like the idea of like the absurdity to me of bringing like Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein to do like an episode of Failing Upward is like, I think I would just like sell them the show at that point. Just kidding. Like you guys can do it better than me. But no, like, yeah, if I had a studio, like I would get people like that, like I would just make sure all these indie animators who are it breaks my heart to see like people having to post like, hey guys, like I need some cash for this month. Like it breaks my heart because I'm like, these people should be working.
Right.
Like why isn't our industry supporting us? Like what's going on right now? And I'm not like a WGA or tag guy. Like I'm not in that industry. Like I'm not in there yet, but from the outsider perspective, I see that they're fighting for their people, and I'm just like, I'm so happy to see that, we're using social media to get everybody kind of like in on all the information. I think it's great, and I hope you guys get the best outcome. And if I had a studio, I would 100% hire everybody I love, and it would be great.
That would be a wonderful way to look at it. And obviously, by the time this episode comes out, if that strike is happening, we'll put links in the description on how you guys can support them, because they absolutely deserve it.
Please support Tag.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go. There's Jellybox Studios is doing wonderful stuff with Adam Conoway right now to get the word out about what's going on with Tag and everything, and animators' rights, and kind of trying to level the playing field in terms of big corporations and animators, and also with, of course, the Coyote versus Acme thing. We're trying and just not lost media, but kind of canceled media.
Yep.
And I think they've been doing a wonderful job with that. And go check them out.
Absolutely. But sadly, we gotta get down from the dream scenario. We gotta get back to reality, and I'll ask the ever so generic question: where do you hope to see yourself in, say, 5 to 10 years from now?
I really hope we just get to keep, obviously, I kind of mentioned, Starstruck and Failing Upward before. I just hope I'm still doing them, honestly.
Yep.
And doing them and getting paid to do them would be nice, because, right now, everything for me is a passion project. All my funds go to my animators, because they're the ones who are bringing this to life, and they deserve to be paid more than me. But, as far as a realistic expectation, I hope that, our Patreon kind of blows up a little bit more, and we're able to get more income and everybody's getting paid. But I just want to keep doing those shows, and I would hope we can keep Failing Upward on a 2-episode a year thing, or please, if we get more money to maybe do even more than that. But I just want to, and then I would say like I really do want to write like on a staff. I think and I would love to work within the studio system at some point, just because that's always been like a dream of mine. Like I've always wanted to like sit in a writer's room, like, and really like hash things out, um, and create something that people love and that resonates with people and that's seen on like a wide scale. But like it's tough. I'll say that too. It's really just tough to get into the animation industry. Like you got to know the right people and you got to pull the right strings and all that great stuff. All that those fun coffee meetings. But I think there is a way in. I hope that like everybody who does want to get in gets in. But for me, like that's my dream, and like I those two things would be great. I would love to work on like a Disney or a Cartoon Network show, and then or work, and then keep doing my indie stuff. I think that's everybody's dream right now, like to have their own outlet and then do what you love for your job. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. It's a good thing to aspire for more at the end of the day. Actually, just having more experience and just doing more of what you love.
yeah, absolutely.
As we start to wind down the interview, I just have one last question I want to ask you, Gary. Like I said before, you're obviously deeply entrenched in art for ages at this point, for just about as long as you can remember growing up, especially in what some would argue is probably some of the peak times for cartoons and such.
Yeah.
How important is art, not just for you, but for the world as a whole?
I think kind of going back to our like our relatability discussion, I think art serves that purpose to kind of see ourselves in stuff, like whether it's a show, a book, cartoon, whatever, an album. Like I think it is the mirror to us basically, where we can see ourselves in these things, and I think it's important to have those outlets for that, and art is that outlet for relatability, and kind of understanding that like somebody's going through something similar to you is really important. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit on that, and yeah. I don't know how to end that one.
Well, I think that is a great way to word it, if I do say so myself.
Sure.
Gary, that's all the questions I have for you. I've already showered you with a whole bunch of praise, but I want to show you a little bit more because it's my podcast. I do what I want. Whenever you first reached out to me, Gary, I was honestly a little honored that you would, because like I said before, I've been seeing your stuff out there and I've been seeing what you've been able to do, and it's really great what you've been able to do. And then taking the opportunity to really deep dive, go into it a whole lot more, like I can't help but love and appreciate all the stuff that you're putting out there and all the stuff that you have a hand in. Like Failing Upward, like I said, with every single episode that I watched of it, every little bit that I saw of it, I felt the connection to the characters. I really felt that the situation that they were in, and I understood where they were coming from. And I think that's both a credit to the show you're presenting, but also the writing you put forth. And I mean, seeing some of the other stuff that you're putting forward as well, whether it's helping out with Animation Station or trying to get this Starstruck off the ground, it just makes me excited for what you're going to do next, seeing what you've already been able to present before. I mean, again, if Failing Upward is more or less a taste of what we're able to get so far, like I can only imagine what you're ready to just belt out to the rest of the world whenever you get the opportunity to showcase more and more and more and more, and it makes me so excited at the end of the day. And I can't help but thank you. Thank you for really putting yourself out there. Thank you for really putting forth these characters in these scenarios that may seem niche to some people, but is really relatable to a whole lot more. Thank you for really putting you out there, and thank you for letting us get to know you a lot better. I'm going to be supporting you every single step of the way, and I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on the podcast. It's really cool. I've been listening to you for a while, and I think you do really great interviews, and you're kind of helping spread the word about a lot of different people in different fields of art and everything, and I think you've been doing a wonderful job. So yeah, it's been an honor to be on the podcast, to be honest. Yeah.
I'll say you don't have to flatter me. You've already appeared on the podcast. We've already got to talking about.
No, I mean, like, it's true though, because it's like, like I have to say this before we wrap up. Like,
okay.
I think indie animation in general, like I was saying, it's a really hard field to kind of get into.
Right.
The fact that somebody's out here kind of trying to help people into that is really important. There aren't a whole lot of indie animation podcasts out there. There's a couple. Mikey McGold has his as well, which I was also on.
There you go.
But it's tricky. It's really tricky because promotion should seem infinite for some people. The internet, you have social media, but it's so easy to get overlooked, and it's really hard to get attached to 140 character tweet. You know what I mean? Yeah. So the fact that you're providing this space where people can come on and talk for an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes is really important. So I think it's great.
Well, thank you once again for the kind words, and thank you once again for your time. Now,
thank you.
If people want to see why exactly I've been, gushing about all this incredible stuff and whatnot, go ahead and plug your stuff for the people at home.
Sure. Okay. We a little tricky, but I think the most. Let's see. So we do have. I mostly post through Twitter. So twitter.com/failingupwardtv. And then Starstruck Tune is the other Twitter. We also have Instagrams. Everything else is going to be under Wayback Studios. So that's WAEBAK Studios. That's where our Patreon is. That's where Instagram is. That's where every other social media is. Newgrounds, that's our thing. YouTube is Wayback Studios as well. Please check us out on there. We've got a bunch of stuff on YouTube and Newgrounds. So we'd love to have you come on there, leave a comment, like videos, share them with people. Really important for our spread to reach. It's just tricky because algorithms suck.
Yes, they do.
We have a blossoming fan community on Newgrounds. We're really thankful for that. Those are and then if you want to follow me, it's all my social media stuff is Mutant Astronaut. So it's Mutant Astronaut on pretty much every social media. And you can follow me on there where I just post random things. I mean, it's not super interesting, but sometimes for whatever reason, I'll post a clip of smiling friends and it'll hit 20K likes. I don't know. It's that is not the most frustrating thing ever. Where it's I love this thing. I'm glad other people like it, but please check out my thing.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's kind of giving me a back door into showing people my stuff. It's hey, by the way, if you like this, check out my show.
Exactly.
It's I post on Twitter a lot. Instagram every so often, but Twitter is my main one.
Absolutely. And that does lead me to, well, first off, all those links you said, I'll be sure to have them and whatever ones you may have missed down in the description below.
Sure.
But it does lead me for one last quick little question. The name of your studio, Wayback Machine, or Wayback, Productions or whatnot. The way that you spell, Wayback, sorry, I apologize, but Wayback, basically Wayback.
No worries. Yeah.
Especially with the way that you spell it or whatnot. Is there a particular reason why you chose that as your name, or is there a special meaning behind it?
Why I chose that, I was talking to a friend and we were trying to get a studio name, and I was I like the name Wayback, but it's kind of boring sounding. It just sounds like it's a little too on the nose, that this is a nostalgia channel of 90s, early 2000s stuff. And then I don't remember. I think one of us came up with the idea. It's what if we spelled it wrong? And we just started throwing all these spellings out, and this one kind of it's weird because it also I don't know why it resonates with me like this, but it also feels the way a sleepaway camp would spell their name, way back. It kind of sounds a little like that.
You got a point. You have a point.
Yeah. It sounds like a New England sleepaway camp or something. like a town in New England, way back. I'm going up to way back Vermont this month or something. It's kind of like that, I guess. I don't know how else to say it, but I don't know. Misspelled things are cool too.
That is true. That is true. Do you have any final words before we sign off?
I just hope people enjoy Failing Upward and hopefully Starstruck soon. The Animation Station, really excited for that to come out. And then this is going to be a really rough summer for animators, so please go support TAG.
Absolutely.
Support indie animation as well. If you see a Patreon for something you like, don't hesitate, support. That's pretty much all I have to say.
And with that, I think that's a wonderful thing to end on. With that, all I've got to say is for the people at home, if you can, pay your artists.
Yes.
Tell me what's wrong, tell me it's parts in motion. Sing me a song.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If this is your first time listening, I greatly do appreciate it. Like I said in the intro, it was a real honor to have Gary reach out and want to be on the podcast and getting the chance to talk to him. Gary, if you've gotten up to this point, sincerely thank you. Thank you for not only reaching out, but for providing a really good conversation. I really enjoyed how introspective and really free-flowing the conversation was for today. It's always nice to really get to know these artists and really get to, pick at their brain at what they're, thinking about, with their process and what they want to accomplish. It's the main reason why I wanted to have this show, or it's at least a major reason why I wanted to have this show. It's always cool to look back more than anything else and see how much this podcast has grown. And I think a major reason why I think that is, something that Gary's actually working on, and that is, once again, Animation Station, being a writer for that. I'm always intrigued whenever there's a new show or a new podcast or whatnot that is focusing on the same topics that I basically am. I'll be honest with y'all. Whenever I first see something like that, my first thought is being a little intimidated, because it's like, I'm looking at what these guys are doing. I'm seeing the guests that they're bringing on, guests that I would dream to talk to, and they're getting a chance to do it. And again, I'm a little intimidated by that, but then I step back and remember that they're doing these shows for the same reason why I'm doing my show. It's not just so that they can have these cool conversations with incredible people. It's to give a spotlight to incredible artists doing incredible stuff. I mean, that's why I'm always amazed with shows like Animation Station, Michael Grayworks indie interviews, Creative Block. There's another one that just recently got announced from Deathberry Inc. called The Animated Series. The Spark Parade, whenever I brought Adam on ages ago at this point. I'm always intrigued and amazed to see what take or what angle they go at to highlight these incredible artists, because that's what's important at the end of the day. As you all could probably attest, there's enough negativity in this world to just deal with. There's enough negativity when it comes to society and government and all stuff like that. There's enough negativity in the art community alone, especially when it comes to situations like AI, freaking strikes, people that are within it, creeps, all the horrible people that are involved in one way or another. There's enough of that in the world. So any opportunity that I see a program, whether it's this one or like one of the other ones I mentioned, taking the opportunity, going out of their way to highlight some incredible artists doing incredible stuff, I'm going to be rooting for that person every single time at the end of the day to the highest peak if I possibly can. So when the opportunity arises, and if you guys haven't already, whether they've dropped it or not, go check out Animation Station. Go check out Michael Grayworks and the stuff that he's doing, not just with the interviews, but the incredible animated stuff that he's working on. Check out Creative Block, because oh my god, the amount of artists that they've been able to interview alone is absolutely stunning. Keep an eye out for Deathberry Inc. when they drop the animated series. Check out the Spark Parade. Check, Mark Maron, all sorts of incredible people. Because these people, the people that are hosting these, are doing what they can to spread some positivity and to really showcase how important the arts are. And just like with this podcast, I want to make sure that we go out there, be a part of their communities, and really show that love and support, not just for the creators behind it, but show that love and support for the creators that they are highlighting. I want the love to go around. I want so many different people to be lifted up for the incredible work that they are doing. Rising tide raises all boats. So let's raise them up higher and higher. Let's show the world just how cool and incredible these people are. Let's showcase to the world these incredible projects that deserve, highlighting and such. Let's just show the world how incredible it is to be creative.